Okay, we'll take a look at the War of 1812. Now we know how it started, so what are the results of the War of 1812? Causes and effects of the War of 1812. So what were three major reasons that the United States declared war on Great Britain? So really, who starts this war? Technically, the United States. The U.S. declared war on Great Britain because of their impressment of U.S. sailors. That's when the British would kidnap American soldiers and force them to serve in the Navy for Britain. Okay. Also, it was a violation of U.S. sea rights and also support of the Native Americans. They felt that the British were giving the Native Americans weapons to fight our settlers on the frontier. So here we are having a fight. Okay, Washington, D.C. now is attacked. In 1814, the British set Washington, D.C. on fire, including the White House. So what first happened here, the United States, we invaded parts of Canada through Detroit, Lake Champlain, and none of these were successful. And the British came back and came down from Canada and even lit our capital on fire. So it was quite the scary time when the Washington, D.C. was being burned. Even the White House was being burned. The story of the president's wife, Dolley Madison, grabbed a portrait of the George Washington on her way out the back door of the White House as the British soldiers were coming in. All right. So, so even though people were fleeing in the city of droves, the First Lady Dolley Madison refused to leave without some of the nation's most important treasures, including a famous Gilbert Stuart portrait of George Washington. It's burned outside of Washington, D.C. So actually today you can even see parts of the Washington, D.C., the building that is still, you can still see burn marks on it in some places that are kept from the War of 1812. All right, so our nation's capital is burned to the ground. All right, the British attacked Fort McHenry at Baltimore. And now Francis Scott Key watched the battle from a British ship where he was trying to convince the British to release an American prisoner. Okay, when the smoke cleared, our flag was still there, which meant the American fort had not been succumbed to the British bombardment. In response, Key wrote a poem, The Defense of Fort McHenry, which later was put to music and renamed the Star-Spangled Banner. This could be a reason why on the 4th of July we also do fireworks. This is an old Defenders veteran of the Battle of Baltimore. This is a photo taken of them in 1880 as they were old men. This is the flag that floated over Fort McHenry in 1814 in Baltimore in 1914. It's actually on display in the Smithsonian. You can take a look at it. And our Star-Spangled Banner, oh say can you see by the dawn's early light. I won't sing it for you. Okay, the Treaty of Ghent. While it ended the war, the treaty did not resolve any of the problems between Britain and France. See, both nations didn't want to fight a war really, and the United States, a baby country, was just sort of trying to get together, and Britain had bigger fish to fry with the French, so it kind of came to a stalemate. So we have signed the Treaty of Ghent on Christmas Eve of 1814. But you have the Battle of New Orleans. Back then, it took news a little bit longer to spread. So even though the war was technically over, no one could make a phone call to way down in New Orleans to Andrew Jackson or the British. So this battle ensues over the port of the Mississippi River in New Orleans. This is a very important battle. Led by Andrew Jackson, the U.S. defeated the British 2 weeks after the Treaty of Ghent was signed, but it still went on. It was probably one of the biggest upsets in history. Andrew Jackson leads this ragtag group of American soldiers. You had French, you had Native Americans, you had freed slaves, all fighting against this British company, and the British are decimated. So as you can see, the British lose 2,030 and the U.S. lose 7. And this kind of is a stamp of approval that the United States was a force to be reckoned with, and showing that the United States can all still stand up to the British power. We'll talk more about the Battle of New Orleans in class. But the war is over, and the United States is looking for a time of peace.